Imagine having the ultimate competitive advantage. Imagine every piece of your content attracting ideal clients to you, not chasing them down. That's not a dream, it's what's possible with the right strategy. And if you haven't heard by now, Jeb and LinkedIn expert Bryn Tillman have written the playbook that will evolve the way you sell. Their new book, The LinkedIn Edge, is your ultimate resource for turning LinkedIn into a revenue-generating machine. You'll learn how to prospect with power, network with a purpose, and build a brand that attracts clients to you. Not only that, but they dive into the fundamentals of using AI so that you won't get left behind. Don't wait, the LinkedIn Edge is on sale everywhere you buy books. Welcome back to the Sales Gravy Podcast. Over the past quarter, we've been exploring the game-changing mindsets, strategies, and routines that define elite sellers. We've taken the most powerful, actionable moments from those conversations and distilled them into one powerhouse episode for you. This is the best of Q3, where you'll get a masterclass in everything from building a velvet rope for your business to adopting the day one follow-up mindset. If you're ready to sharpen your skills and finish the year strong, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Have you ever been so focused on closing the deal that you skip the steps that actually earn the yes? This next clip is a masterclass in slowing down to speed up. It's a reminder to return to the fundamental routines: greet, discover, diagnose, and then prescribe. You'll hear why customers' experience of you is the single best predictor of the final outcome and why a consistent process will always beat a hurried pitch.
We need to actually learn how to read ourselves better and just be consistent, emotionally consistent, even when everything else is kind of can heave around us. How do I show up at the door and be that consultant that is there to provide a solution and listen and ask questions, but not just kind of be desperate because I've had a few bad calls and then switch into a pitch mode or things like
Yeah.
that. And so I think for us, we're like, man, like we really need to be aware of this. What are some thoughts from you on like how do we kind of get that into our daily rhythm where we're tracking that and we kind of know where we are?
Yeah. Sort of like you got to be the Scotty Scheffler of roofing, right? That calm, cool, everything is cruising forward. So the first thing when I think about what you do that I always have to remind myself of. So this is a internal reminder is that maybe I went on, 5 jobs where I did estimates today and I'm stringing all those together in my mind, but the last house that I go to, the last homeowner that I have a conversation with, I'm the only conversation with my company they had that day. And they don't know all the other stuff that happened. It's a reminder for me to compartmentalize each of those conversations individually for each customer. Because the one thing that we can't lose sight of is that your customer, even though they're buying a roof or they're buying doors or buying windows for their home, that home, by the way, is their biggest asset, the most valuable thing in their life. It's the thing they care about the most, where they spend the most time. For them, it's really emotional. And they have a lot of fears of things that could go wrong. And their emotional experience with you as they're going through their own decision journey, do I want to do business with you? The way that they feel is more predictive of outcome than any other variable. So in other words, the way they feel about you. So people buy you. So think about that. So if you start thinking about how do I form and develop a higher level of emotional intelligence so that I'm bringing my best self into every single conversation, I begin with recognizing that for that particular person, it was the only conversation they had with me that day. I'm not thinking about the other ones, all the other ones, and then understanding that how they feel about me, right? How I show up is more important than anything else because they're going to buy me first and then they're going to buy a roof. And they're going to buy me because they feel like I care about them, that I listen to them, that I understand them, that I feel safe and secure and that they can trust me. And that's the one thing they want to believe is that when they give you money or they give you the go ahead, they can trust that you're going to do it right and that they're going to be taken care of. And that doesn't happen if you show up desperate or you show up in a different mood or you're bringing the things that are happening at home into those meetings. So if you can compartmentalize that works. And if you understand the value of those conversations, that makes it easier for you to show up as your very best self.
When does a sales follow-up cross the line from persistent to pushy? This next clip offers a powerful mindset shift. While you're counting your 6th or even 7th attempt for your prospect, it's always day one. They aren't tracking your touches. They're looking for a partner that they can trust. You'll learn why a steady follow-up cadence isn't about being annoying. It's about proving you're prepared, reliable, and won't quit on them.
So I think when it comes to prospecting specifically, I think oftentimes that aha moment comes when people recognize that they're probably not working hard enough on their leads.
Mm.
So, like just yesterday, for example, I was doing an on-site delivery and, we usually will ask the classroom, like, how many times do you think the average salesperson will make outreach to a lead before we stop making any attempts? And that's stopping without even getting a no, without getting I'm the wrong decision maker. Like we just quit.
Yeah.
And, we all know that the average salesperson typically stops 3, maybe 4 attempts before we move on with life because we want to find a juicier lead. We don't have enough time. We assume they're not interested in all these kind of things. And so I feel when it comes to prospecting, when you go through these exercises, that blend, like you just mentioned, of some of Jeb's techniques with, our own experiences and stories and everything like that, you go through this and you talk to the classroom around how important it is that you keep making this outreach and that you're making it frequently. So it's not that I'm going to leave you a voicemail today and then maybe warm that lead back up in like a month. So I give you some space because then I've been forgotten. You don't remember my name. You don't remember my organization. I'm basically starting from ground zero if I'm giving too much time between my outreaches. So I think when we think about prospecting aha moments, that's one of the biggest ones that I see in classrooms and virtual audiences where they're like, that's exactly what I've been doing. Like, I don't want to annoy somebody. So I will leave them a voicemail. I'll send them an email and then I'll just let it cool down. Well, when we let it cool down, you're losing that momentum. And so usually in the rooms, you see people kind of squirm a little bit when you're like, no, you need to be outreaching like every week, every couple of days, every week until you get them to engage. Like, that's what we want, right? And they're like, well, I actually don't think I do. I'm like, well, why don't you want engagement? Well, what if they tell me no? And, there's nothing wrong with getting a no. That might start a conversation. If it's a no because we have a contract which is up in 6 months, great. That's exactly why we should be talking now, But people are so afraid of getting the no that they'd rather let those leads
Wither.
wither away in the CRM. Oh, nobody's answering because I'm afraid to have a conversation.
What if one of your greatest strengths, your empathy, is also what's holding you back in sales? In this clip, sales expert Jeb Blount tackles the internal conflict many of us feel about interrupting prospects. He calls it projection, the dangerous habit of assuming clients hate being interrupted as much as we do. You'll hear him break down his empathy scale and explain how to reframe interruption from a pushy tactic to a professional necessity.
Take a look at those things. So one is, if it's just interruption that's bothering you, then I get that. And that's called projection, right? You are projecting your own values on other people. Now, I don't do that. And I don't do that as a rule. So I have no problem interrupting people. But I do know that if I'm going to interrupt, I'm going to get a better result if I'm relevant. I don't like being interrupted. Nobody likes being interrupted. But I know that for my sales success, for my income, that I have to interrupt people, or as I say in the book, you're going to have skinny kids, right? You're not going to get the income. So I don't allow that to happen. Now, the reason that you're in this situation where it's happening to you, so I want you to understand this, it's not completely your fault. If you go to Sales EQ, a book that I wrote after Fanatical Prospecting, I talk about the empathy scale. And on the empathy scale, there are, say, 10 spots on the empathy scale. At the very far end, there's sociopaths on one side. And on the other side, there are hyper-empathic people who cry in the presence of trees. Somewhere in the middle are where most salespeople are. So there are some salespeople who are like, I would say, 3s and 4s, and I'm probably a 3. And 3s and 4s, a sociopath would be a 1. A 3 or a 4 is going to be self-centered and more outcome-driven. So we're less likely to, before making a phone call, go, I wonder how Kurt's going to feel about this. I don't really like being interrupted. I don't want to be too pushy. I don't want to say those things. We're just going to interrupt. And I suspect that the young lady who's calling me from Gong, for example, I suspect that she's probably in that boat. Like, she has no problem interrupting. I mean, she's doing a pretty good job of being persistent. Her message stinks. As much as I want to reward her effort for coming to me, at least she's called me twice, which is so rare. I'm not rewarding someone who just comes to me with a generic message, who didn't take even a moment to understand what the pitch is. The pitch is just, it's terrible. Like, I literally could sit down with Gong's marketing and sales team and walk them through how to change that in about 2 seconds that would get them better results with calls like that. But I don't have a problem with that. You're probably a 6 or a 7, which means that you have a higher level of empathy. So when you're sitting with people, your first thought in your mind is, how are they going to feel? Which, if you think about empathy, it's your ability to step into their shoes. That's why you end up projecting. You step into their shoes and go, I wouldn't want to be interrupted, so I don't feel comfortable interrupting them. And that causes you in your heart, like as you're about to make a phone call, you go, I don't want to be too pushy here. And it makes you feel bad, so you just quit doing it. And it also causes a level of cognitive dissonance, which means that you're struggling with, I want to be a person who's empathetic to the feelings of other people, and I care about them and I listen to them, but I also have to be an interrupter. And those two things tend to be at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So this is a mental game that you're playing right here between your ears. And the key here is understanding that projecting is the most dangerous thing in sales. It is dangerous for salespeople because you're deciding for your customer in advance what they want to buy, which is the opposite of empathy.
What if your business felt less like a transaction and more like a red carpet invitation? That's the idea behind the Velvet Rope framework. It's a simple, human-centered approach to not just finding clients, but making them feel like a true insider. When clients feel curated, not commoditized, they don't just stay, they bring their friends. In this clip, you'll hear how that simple shift can make referrals do the heavy lifting for you.
I'm so excited about this framework. So the Velvet Rope framework came about because I go to events and I see events, and so many times you get excited to go, which is very different feeling than dreading going somewhere.
Yes.
And so I started thinking, why can't it be like this in business? What can we do to make people want to show up and go behind the rope? It's like anytime you see a red carpet and you see that velvet rope, you're like, how do we get in? How do we get in? That's what we need to do in our businesses. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They go very technical, but they forget the human element, the element where we want to attract people. And that's where the know, find, love comes in. It's really about knowing your people, target marketing, finding your people, which is prospecting, and loving them hard, which is client experience. So putting those three together, if we can look at all three components, we can let people in behind the rope.
Oh, I love that. And especially the love part of it. So the engagement with your clients. So what I do here at Sales Gravy is I help manage our client success team. So that's the part that I'm most heavily involved with. And even in previous roles, my former employer, we had every year, February, Valentine's Day. Well, that was their day for client appreciation. It was a different themed box every year. So it was a mix of that marketing, but it was also something tangible that made an impact that somebody could actually use and just generated that warm feeling with your clients. And I know last time you were here, you were talking about how you dedicate time once a month to send out gifts and do client outreach like that. And you've had other clients that you've had them implement that into their businesses. What's some of the results you've seen from it?
We call it surprise and delight, where you're doing something unexpected that the clients they just don't know it's coming. And that's where the impact happens. But here's what's been cool about the results. You always get a call. Like typically if you send something or it's marketing or whatever, sometimes you get calls. But when you send something unexpected, they pick up the phone and they call you. And usually the first best benefit, I think, is they call you and then they say, oh, by the way, I probably need to do this, or I owed you a call. So it's a way to keep the conversation moving without them realizing you're keeping it moving. But the second thing that's been even better is the ripple effect it has. So they start telling other people. I'm very curated in the gifts we send clients, and I try to make them very personalized. So they talk about them with their friends and they talk about them with their colleagues, and it results in more referrals because there's a buzz about you, and they're letting people know that you're out there that wouldn't have known about you otherwise.
I love that. It's just like one of the things I did while I was actively in sales, anytime I met somebody and just in general conversation, if they mentioned that their anniversary was coming up or even birthday, they had children, that sort of thing, I always made a note about it in our CRM because CRMs are our best friends.
CRMs are wonderful.
Yes. And I'd always make a note, and that would be part of my outreach. Yeah. I would actually make it as a task in there to remind myself, but I also genuinely loved the clients that I worked with. So my notes weren't just happy birthday and that was it. I also just personalized them a little further. So
it's huge. And a lot of people, it seems like I think that and you think that way, but a lot of people And people listening are probably like, oh, I never thought of that. But it's so easy to do,
Yes.
but it's so often overlooked. And it's just a step that I think anybody in sales should be able to implement quick.
What's the difference between moving fast and actually getting somewhere? In this next clip, we explore the velocity mindset, a powerful framework that's all about choosing a destination before you start the journey. It's a simple but profound shift in perspective. You'll learn how to stop pitching a product and start diagnosing the real problem, making the final decision feel easy and obvious for your client.
When you think of velocity, Jeb, you think of what?
Fast.
Speed.
Yeah.
Fast. That's what everybody says in my audiences, but it's not velocity. If that's all you think, you get burnout. Velocity is speed with direction, the end result. And what I found in 30 years of doing this like you have, I've found that the biggest problem for salespeople, entrepreneurs, and executives is that they're not going after the right outcome.
Interesting. I saw that old Zig Ziglar story. He tells about this young man who's walking by, this old guy. He's sitting on the porch, rocking in his rocking chair, and dog's laying next to him. And the young man notices the dog is laying on a nail. And he looks at the old man and says, how come that dog is laying on that nail? And the old man looked down at the young man and says, they don't hurt him bad enough. And I think that's the same thing. So you've decided that you've got a big enough direction that it's motivating you to do what the speech therapist says for you to do. What's next?
Well, and then it took a couple of, well, maybe a decade of deprogramming, so I can get my confidence wings underneath me. I started in sales, and I started practicing it without even knowing it. My first sales job was the School of Hard Knocks selling copiers door to door.
Like, you talk to people who did that, those stories, like if you could do that, you could sell anything.
Yeah, and again, it helped me with the velocity mindset, even though I didn't know it at that time, because my first job was selling the Royal 115 copier, which was the first copier that was plain bond, no more liquid, no more messing all your clothes, and you can change it real easy. And it did 15 crisp copies. And I said, where's the bigger unit? 6 months. Where's the collator? 6 months. The duplicator? 6 months. Everything 6 months. I had this one copier. I go and I kept getting the door shoving me outside. And after 3 months of not selling something, I decided to have a board meeting, which we talk about in the velocity mindset. And where do you do a board meeting, Jeb, in New Jersey? In a diner.
Right.
So I took me, myself, and I to the board meeting. And I said, okay, what's going on? I'm not getting any traction. All right, what are you talking about? Copiers. All right, what does copiers do? What's the bottom line? It's a communication vehicle. Maybe start with that. That was the kind of conversation I had in that diner. Because if you don't do something different, you're going to have the same result. So I went back to the next person and I said, hey, would you agree with me that a copier is nothing more than a communication vehicle? And Jeff, all of a sudden, the person thought I thought I was a therapist and she was laying on my couch. She goes, can I talk to you? We have one copier on the 4th floor, the big one. Sally has to make one copy from the 1st floor. By the time she gets up there, talks to everybody, it's 45 minutes. I said, how much time is spent a week on that? She goes, try 2 full-time employees. And I said, I'm not here to compete against that big copier. If you buy one of mine on every floor, I'll solve that problem. You'll get those 2 full-time employees. And I sold 3 at a time. I wasn't shooting big enough. I was trying to replace a copier for a copier. I couldn't compete with that big machine. I had to find a gap that they had that was so important to them that if I could fill it, they would still do business with me. And that's what I learned at that moment.
And that's a wrap on our look back at the very best of Q3. The common thread through all of these clips is simple, but profound. Your process predicts your success. Whether it's how you prepare for a call, how you follow up, how you treat your best clients, consistency and intention are what close deals. My challenge to you is this: pick one idea you heard today and put it into action on your very next call. To make sure you never miss insights like these, go and subscribe to the Sales Gravy podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to it right now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Sales Gravy podcast.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to click like and subscribe so you never miss a single video. And if you want more sales training content, go to learn.salesgravy.com.